We are live. Gabriel, thank you so much for being the first guest of the what I called Connect Dots podcasts. So the idea here, and since I'm really looking forward to learn from community managers that are working in the intersection of sports, fitness, wellness, plus communities, it's really an honor for me to have the global head of community of an amazing project that I'm sure that most of the people knows, Midnight Runners. So it just like I said, it's an honor to have you as the first guests. For those of who are listening to us that don't know you, or even to those that know you from social media, because I know that you are really active on social media. That's amazing. Just tell us a little bit more about you. Like, who are you? Where are you from? And then we can go from there.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. My name is Gabriel, and I am a Canadian that has been abroad for the last 5 or so years now, chasing down kind of running culture and community. And my current position is the global head of community for Midnight Runners, which is a global fitness and social community. And it's a movement that is the intersection between sport and social connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, in the most basic element of what Midnight Runners is, it is we daisy chain a bunch of backpack speakers and a bunch of speakers together to make a large moving rave, and we run and we stop and do exercises in order to wait for the people, and it makes it a more social experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's the boot camp run. And so that's the most like basic, what is an event of Midnight Runners. But the idea and concept of it is, creating a social space in cities where people can, can meet other people and network with other people in their city in a different environment than the bar or any traditional way of meeting people or like a networking event. This is, everyone has like a level playing field and everyone's accepted no matter your ability with running. So the events are really created to more enjoy running and bring the fun and energy to running rather than training. So it's not training focused, it's social focused.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. But in order for people to join, they don't need to be a runner.
No. So the events are totally free, and they're open to all levels. Depending on which event, some of the events in different cities either they do 10Ks and 5Ks, or some of them just do 5 to 7Ks. But in order to like really enjoy it, you should be comfortable running at like a very slow pace, at least 5 kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a great place for beginners because there's stops. Also, I think it's also a great leveling field between someone, for example, that is very like CrossFit or weightlifting heavy, and or a runner, and it brings them kind of all into similar playing field, because you run 1.5 kilometers and they stop and do an exercise. And for runners are sometimes lazy and don't do their strength conditioning, and so the strength conditioning slows them down. For the weightlifters or the CrossFitters that haven't trained so much with cardio, they use the weightlifting or the functional training as their break to catch up. So it brings everyone on a playing field, and at each exercise stop. So if it would be a 5-kilometer run with 3 exercise stops, we encourage people to meet a new person at every single stop. So there's a lot of interaction. And this was born in London in 2015 and is now in 14 cities around the world.
Wow.
But it started out with just like a Facebook post saying, hey, we're going to go running. And there was, people that showed up all of a sudden with headphones, and they're like, okay, like, people bringing headphones, let's bring along a speaker to keep it more social. And as the group got bigger, they're like, okay, well, let's, it's spreading out a bit. Let's stop and wait for other people. And let's do some exercises to keep warm. And so that's how it started. And, with the entire idea of it being, social. And so move forward from there.
I love the
So
concept.
it was started by two people in London, and I got involved in 2017 when it first moved to Berlin. And since then I've been helping grow it to 14 cities around the world.
Okay, and you being the global head of community, well, and knowing that to set a purpose for a potential community to be built, what do you believe, or what is for you the purpose of the community? So what's the thing that you have in mind as the mission? So we are trying to get, I don't know, more people to join Midnight Runners because our purpose is.
Our purpose is to create fun and free fitness to more people around the world, and create a different type of social space. And I really think that there is, Midnight Runners fits in the niche of the intersection between fitness and the social world. And my goal for the communities around the world is to really create a movement of like social change surrounding the way that people view running. Traditionally, when people think of running, they think of marathons, they think of training, they think of the laps that they had to do in their gym class around the school. It was as more of like form of punishment or training, right? Or when they think of a running club, it's a very like training focus, right? And I want to bring Midnight Runners as this a new way of approaching the sport of running and making it fun and accessible to an entire new demographic of people who wouldn't otherwise have thought about themselves as runners. Right?
Yeah. And I love it.
So it's creating a new social space for an entirely new demographic of people, and using running as a tool to connect people. So my goal is to change the perspective of running. It's a movement. I guess an anti
performance.
And not anti-performance, it's just a different way of thinking. Not I guess anti is the wrong word, but more of like a different option.
A different. So you are trying to bring a new perspective and a new way to look into running that goes a little bit more beyond training, competition, and so on and so on. So I like it. And at this moment, it's just like I believe in real life community. So taking into account that you're already on 14 places, like most of the activities are in real life. Do you have idea about, like, taking into account those 14 locations, how many members you have? So, and even though knowing that it's free to join, so maybe the numbers are not like very, very clear, but do you have already an idea of how many members you have?
Yeah, usually at each event, there's between 100 and 200 people at each event around the 14 cities around the world. Some of our communities, they strayed between like 60 and 80, while others strayed between 200 and 300. Specifically in Barcelona and Bogota, they have sometimes they have to cap the events at 200 or 250 people, because otherwise more people will show up, right?
Oh, wow.
Which I think is good. It really, it's creating a wave there, and it shows that there are a lot of people that want to be a part of that movement, right?
Of course. And being a free community, so the question that I would like to ask you is, how do you, or do you have to do any like work in order to retain new members? So what's the work behind promoting the community and trying to get more members? Or is that even a task? Because it's like you're saying, some of the communities have like 2,000 members. some of them they need to limit in order just to keep things under control. Do you do any like do you have any strategies in order just to promote the community and get new members, or do you think that the wheel is already working so well that that's not even a task?
Well, I guess there's two things here. I see the events as a conduit to creating community. The events are a social space where people can create connections and find communities within there. And there are communities within, there is the Midnight Runners community within each thing. And I think that's what keeps people coming back, is that they meet the people. There's the electric energy of the event, where you're running and moving and you're meeting people, and you're doing something together as a pack. And so that's like releasing endorphins and making yourself like more like open and connected to people around you. And then afterwards, what keeps people coming back is the people, right? And creating those connections. Like, wow, like I have met some really amazing like-minded people here, and I want to come back, right? And so that's what keeps people coming back, is the community aspect itself.
Yeah.
Right. So the events are more of a conduit and a social space where community is created. Those social connections are created. Right.
But there's like a what's the frequency of the event? It's like one time per month. It's
so these events are every week. In some communities they do two events a week, but most of the communities run once a week.
Okay. It's you being the global head of community. I'm sure that you have like chapter community managers. How do you find them? What's the DNA of a Midnight Runners community leader, like imagine in Bogota or Barcelona?
So my job is to move to a city every 4 to 5 months to start a new community. And that's a good question, because a lot of people are not really sure when you say start a community, like how does one go about doing that? And for me it's quite simple, and it happens organically. What I do is I just go out and I meet the most golden people. I'm starting, yes, maybe, in the basic essence, I'm starting a running community. But what I'm really trying to do is, find positive people that want to be a part of, a global movement, and want to be part of a social community. And so what I do is I go out and I try to find and meet just the most golden people. And when you meet some golden people, other golden people are just attracted to that, and it builds very, very organically, right? Yes, there's some social media, but it's not like there's no like special like marketing game plan. It's all just like word of mouth. If you bring good people together, more good people will come. If you create a very positive and opening and welcoming culture, people will be drawn to that. And so I think that the main thing is one, bringing in the right people that you want to surround yourself with, setting an intention for the community, and being consistent and communicating that well, and giving them leadership and ownership, right? So in each city there is 14, I guess 10 to 18 captains in each city.
In each city, okay.
Yeah. So these are the core. These are the ambassadors of the community. These are the people that like help organize events. So it's a team of volunteers that run these events. And so it's my job to go in and create that initial culture, show them and teach them the ways that you welcome people into the community, which is very straightforward. It's just setting and creating that space with intent is really important. And then that when I leave, communities continues to thrive, because these people are continuing to perpetuate that culture forward. You know.
Okay. And so, and what's your main job as as the global head of community? I'm sure that it's not only to create new chapters or new teams, or to bring Midnight Runners to new locations. So besides starting a new community in a specific place, what are the other main priorities you have as the global head of community?
Is checking in with all of the other crew captains around the world. And I stay in constant contact with the city leads in each of the cities. So there's 2 city leads in each of the 14 cities. I stay in contact with them and making sure that they're staying aligned with the core values of the movement. And they're continuing to bring on the right people and bring on those golden people, and direct things in the right way.
Okay.
So it's my job is to kind of stay in touch and direct the movement and the culture of the movement, and help organize key events in different cities.
Okay. And imagine that I'm a new member that I want to join Midnight Runners. So, and besides the social side of all the events, what do you believe, or what do you believe is the value proposition of someone who wants to join Midnight Runners? Okay, is it just okay? So there's this group of like-minded runners, and let's have some fun. Or are you preparing something for the future based on the feedback that you get from the 14 cities that you have right now?
I'm not sure if I understand.
Okay, so why do you believe that people join Midnight Runners? What do you feel that are the reasons why people join Midnight Runners?
They come for the workout. A lot of people will say oh, I want to go do exercise, and they stay for the electric energy and the people, right? Okay. I think that's the basic and foundation of it.
Okay. And so do you think, so right now, do you believe that people look to join Midnight Runners, especially because, again, workout, social, and that's the main reason people come back?
The main reason people come back is the connection, the human connection. And I think it also is a really great release of energy, unlike no other, right? There's the feeling of running. A lot of people, listen to this podcast, may run, and yourself as an ultra runner, that kind of freeing feeling of running. But also as Midnight Runners, you're running in a pack. It is a large group of 150 people parading down the streets, and we literally take over traffic. We become the traffic. We take over the streets, and it's reclaiming the city streets and feeling like you are part of the city. You're owning the city again. As someone stampeding through the street, and the music is also blasting through you, and you can feel those vibrations through your chest. And as you're stampeding through the city, it's not uncommon for everyone in the group just to yell, scream, and dance, right? And I think the world needs more of that. And the Midnight Runners creates a social space where you can yell, scream, and dance and run through the middle of the streets. And I think that's such a freeing feeling. And I think just that the act of doing so is something that is so uncommon in the lives of most people. And this is such a freeing, a freeing act. And so I think what comes people back is that release of energy, and that I guess rekindling of energy throughout the week, right? Every time I finish an event, even if I'm feeling down before, I always am, feeling motivated for the rest of the week.
I love it. And besides the events, so that happen 1-2 times a week, depending on the location, is there, so are people connected in any other platform? So imagine that, okay, they connect during the event. Do the captains work in order just to join the community in, I don't know, in a digital space, or do they have other strategies to keep the people together in that specific location? So that's question number A. And question number B, right now, are the locations connected with each other? So imagine that I'm in Colombia, so Bogota. Is it possible for me to connect with someone in Barcelona, or is something that you are planning to put in practice?
Mhm. So there are, all of the captains around the world are connected through a Slack channel,
Okay.
right, which is pretty active, and there's a lot of communication and sharing of ideas and exercises and ways of organizing the community and special events between different captains around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really amazing space where I see people connect with different captains from around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of like the communities in each of those cities, there is a WhatsApp chat, and we encourage that those. I mean, there's a lot of social interaction in all of those WhatsApp chats. That
Mm-hmm.
people go there to ask for advice, and and network with people, and organize social events. And we use an app called My Crew to organize the
Mm-hmm.
events. And that's more of like an events based platform. But in terms of like the larger connections, people can go on that same app and they can sign up for any Midnight Runners event around the world. And what's really cool is that they are able to show up, and in the bio it says, like, I am part of Midnight Runners Toronto, I am part of Midnight Runners Bogota, and they can show up to any Midnight Runners event around the world and still feel that energy and connect with people, right? So I think that's what something is really beautiful. And there are people who have been to like more than 7 communities around the world, and they've traveled to special events. Midnight Runners Toronto, for example, there's a couple of them that went to visit them in Paris, in Berlin, in Barcelona, in London, and they were able to like connect with with all the runners and those and meet people in those cities, rather than just when you're traveling, seeing it from a tourist eye. You meet people that live there and experience it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what's really powerful about the global community, is that you have connections around the world.
I love it. There's before moving just to ask you a few questions regarding you as a community manager, I would love to know one more thing regarding the Midnight Runners community. So because, well, this community managers are always talking about like metrics, how to track the success of a specific program or a specific community. How do you measure the success of all the things that you put in practice? Is there, and this might sound like a stupid question, knowing that the main goal is for you to put people together in the streets, to have fun, to have an amazing time during that specific event. Do you call it training? You don't call it training.
No, events, Midnight Runners events. Yeah.
Events. Okay. So what's the way that you use? What are the metrics? How do you sense the success of a specific event? What's the way of you to get feedback and improve, I don't know, activities, the value, the content that you share? what are the metrics or what are the strategies that help you to track success?
I mean, that's a really hard question.
Okay.
And I think it's important to, try to define success, but, especially success within a community is
Mm-hmm.
difficult to, difficult to define.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of the events, events over 100 plus people usually have a very like, chaotic, high energy, and energy feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what I hear from the crew captains when I stay in touch with them, and when I know that they say the event is electric, there is a lot of energy, and people are, yelling and screaming through the streets. Then for me, that is something that I was like, okay, this is success. The event is a success. In terms of the community, I know the events can be a success, but the community really starts to flourish after some time when I see that there's like other WhatsApp groups being created of friends, events happening in different parts of the cities. People are coming together, and I see these groups of friends and start to flourish, and activities being shared within the WhatsApp groups.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that as being a very I see that as success. It's like, okay, we've created community.
Mm-hmm. So so what you mean is that you don't have any, and I totally understand. So you don't have any like formal metrics. You don't use like, like a form that you send after the event saying, oh, what was your opinion about this event? Are you trying to get back? So you don't have any formal strategies in order to get opinion from members.
No, I don't think that I, as a community value like community leader, can derive a lot of value from that input. I think it's more, what you see when you talk with people. The overall feedback from
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, makes
But
sense.
no, we don't have like, there is on the app is like rate 5 stars. Like, how was this event? You can like rate it, but like, you know, that what does 5 stars mean?
Yeah, true.
No.
I totally understand, and I'm sure that's I don't know, but I would say that success for you is to see that like a new member shows up, and on the next event he continues to show up and starts to bring more friends, and so on and so on. So I totally understand. I totally understand that.
Mhm.
So moving to like you, Gabriel, as community manager, I would love to know like how did you get into community management? So uh, did you had like any previous experience before joining Midnight Runners?
Mhm.
So what was your starting point that then led you to join Midnight Runners?
Mhm. So I studied anthropology in university, and I was always very interested in human culture. And growing up, I was always organizing events for friends, and like creating spaces where friends from one part of my life could meet other friends, and like creating those connections, and like um and throughout university and the different things that I was involved with, I really I saw the impact that a community can have on the world. Really, like it can have an impact on the people within it, and on the external world, and create really like positive impact in their own city. And when I moved to Berlin, I started realizing, I was like, okay, like I moved outside of my community back in Canada, and I need to find new community. Once you move outside of the community that you're currently in, you realize you realize what you're missing, right? Um, but I also did some like consulting of like in, back in Toronto before I moved to Berlin. How do you create a community within a neighborhood, right? There's a neighborhood, the people live together, but how do you create a community? And then what is that? Like, how do you make those connections? Then I actually started working for an app in Berlin, a startup there. It was a community, based, or a community and event based app, right? It's where you would like log on different like social and sports events for communities. So I worked with them, kind of like consulting. It's like, okay, what does a community need? Like how do you connect people? Like what are some of the needs and wants that people need? And I also did that as well for another application in London in 2019. This is all before joining Midnight Runners. But I was both a volunteer for Midnight Runners in Berlin and in London before starting on full time for Midnight Runners. So, but throughout that time, I've always been really, intrigued by the idea of community and what it brings the people within, but also like the value that it brings to a city.
And since, well, officially, so you joined Midnight Runners in 2019, 17.
And 17.
17, okay. So 5 years passed, almost 5 years passed. What were the main lessons you already learned from being community management? So imagine that you have a class of students who are crazy about community. What would you say that there were the main lessons you learned throughout these past 5 years?
Community is extremely important and shouldn't be overlooked, and should be, if you want to make an impact and want to have a larger impression on more people, you need to create it with intent and create a culture. And it doesn't need to be, the same thing that I talked about before, about how I go look for like those golden people and set an intent and create a culture. That can be done with anything. It can be a crochet club, it can be a book club, it can be anything, but you have to create, you have to set that intent and create a culture. And it's like, okay, what is it that you want to create? What space do you want to create? And so I think the biggest thing I learned is that bringing together the right people is really important, but also like making sure that you're creating the right culture around that, and like thinking about what you want to achieve. And then from there, if you crack that, you can have a very large impact on everyone, a part of the culture, a part of the community.
For you, what's the hardest part on building community? Because, well, this more than many of us who are starting. What's like to build a community is really hard. And I really believe that you need to be really passionate about this process of bringing people together with the purpose in mind, in order to make it happen. So, from your experience, what do you believe is the hardest part on building community?
I think that it is, defining your core values and, staying true to them, even in the face of adversity, and being consistent with what you're doing. Right. So, I think it's important to, the hardest part is those in between phases, those beginning phases, right? Where maybe people aren't showing up to your events, maybe people aren't interacting, maybe people aren't engaging, and it's staying true to what you believe in, and you believe that this is going to make an impact, and like you believe in this culture, and you continue pushing that forward. So I think the hardest thing is, I guess, not giving up and continue that passion driving me forward.
Yeah. True. Like I remember, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. I wrote that in order for you to succeed on like community building, you need two skills. One of them is passion. The second one is persistence. So and persistence on one way, patience on the other way. So I totally agree with you. So last questions, like where do you get the inspiration in order for you to be a better community manager? Like you don't do anything and you only use your energy, or I don't know, do you like to read books, you like to watch videos, you seek inspiration by visiting other communities that might be related to sports or not? Where do you seek the inspiration in order just to grow and to be a better community manager?
In every city that I have been to over the last 5 years, I've reached out to other people who are building community in the cities, and all different types of communities, and seeing the impact that they make on the people that surrounds them, and seeing how they do it. And I've been open and talking to people about building community, and that's really what keeps me motivated, because I see the impact that community has around the world. And I think that community is is a field of discipline, or a field of study that is not talked about. It's not, like, I guess, formally thought about, or formally a field of study, I guess.
It's would you say that, again, according to your experience, according to your passion, do you believe that the future of many brands, and again, let's focus on the sports, fitness, wellness sector industry, would you say that the future is community driven?
Yes, I think that in terms of, okay, like, so you're talking in terms of like sports brands?
Well, I would say, well, we can divide the question in two. So would you say, I was starting the question by asking, would you say that the future of business is community driven? But then, in order to go a little bit more niche, I focused the question on, would you say that like the future of sports, fitness, and wellness brands, wellness projects, wellness startups is community driven?
Well, I think sports for so long in human history has been community driven. It's been, sports has been something that's been bringing people together and unifying people, right? I mean, think about everything from like the ancient Mayan ball game, of like people coming together and watching this act together, to basketball, football teams. These are events that are moments in time that bring many people together around to create a community, a sense of community and connection with one another. Right.
But when I sorry to interrupt you, Gabriel, but when I mean like community driven, it's like, imagine community as a strategy, just to go a little bit more beyond like the social media. So like imagine to create I wouldn't
yeah, I get what you're saying in terms of brands.
Yeah, so
in terms
community
of
as a strategy,
marketing, community as a strategy is that is the future. And that's why, for example, we have local and global sponsors that support us, because they've realized the importance in that, right? And right now, especially in this day and age, in terms of marketing, like people are so used used to like just like images being flashed to them in like, advertisements, right? And that it doesn't have an effect anymore. Like what really, has an effect is brands that stand for something and stand, to support something, right? And and these grassroots communities that we're creating here are something that like brands are realizing that they have a lot of value, right? And that's where they're getting involved. They're like, okay, everyone, for example, like everyone around me at a Midnight Runners run is wearing Reebok, right? And you're like, okay, like that if they're all wearing it, it must mean that it is good. They trust this brand, right? And that's kind of the brand is when they're aligning with a community, it also aligns with the values of the community.
Of course. Is there any sports fitness wellness brands that that they are already working on building a community that you say that makes a match with your values, or that serve as an inspiration to you? For example, you mentioned Reebok, but for example, are there any other brands that you see that inspire you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a ton of brands around the world that are doing, running and fitness groups. Some are more training focused. Some more social focused. Right. For example, like Adidas runners, you show up there and it's like you do like a 6 mile run. It's more training focused and they have training plans, right? Versus Midnight Runners is something that's like, I guess, very, very social focused. And what we're trying to create is, it's the social atmosphere. And we like play music. It's not, we don't come with training plans or like, it's not training focused. So I think that in terms of like, I don't know if there's anyone out there or any brand out there kind of doing what we're doing right now.
One last question. Imagine that that we are back in 2017 and you had all the experience that you already so the experience that you have already from Midnight Runners. And what would you say to yourself if today was day one? Would you do something different as a community manager? And based on the experience that you have right now? Sorry for this philosophical question, just to finish.
No, I just want to think about that. I think I learned a lot of things along the way that I wouldn't change. I would definitely tell myself to constantly remind yourself of like the core values and the reasons why you're doing it. And act with intention. Okay. That's what I would say.
Okay. Where people can follow your journey as the global head of community at Midnight Runners?
So you can follow me on my Instagram account. So hopefully you can link that into the bio of the podcast, but it's Intrepid Soul.
Intrepid Soul.
SOLE. And yeah, you can follow along with Midnight Runners on the Instagrams and the website.
And what's the name of the doc that you guys at Midnight Runners? So it's running under the roof.
Running the roof.
Running the roof.
Yeah.
People must watch that documentary because it's incredible. And I will leave the video as a suggestion on the bio of this podcast. So knowing that you have to jump to a meeting, Gabriel, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all the knowledge.
Thanks for having me.
Lots of success for 2022, not only as you being a professional community manager, but for the whole Midnight Runners team. Thank you so much for accepting the invite. All the best.
Okay. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.